Howdy folks, monthly update for the month of July. It was certainly a busy month with the Nations Championship getting its first leg done down here in the south. We'll head back up north in November for the continuation of that new competition. We're now in August with the greatest rivalry on the horizon between the All Blacks and the Springboks. The Wallabies will be taking on the Japanese very shortly. Likewise, the Pumas will be in kind of limited action with them just having 3 matches across the next kind of couple of months with no rugby championship this year. The NPC and Curry Cup underway. So there is still rugby on, although it feels like a little bit of a calm before the storm at the moment, at least from a New Zealand perspective, with, as I said, greatest rivalry is only a very short kind of weekish away until we see the All Blacks up against the Stormers. And yeah, right now there's no top flight rugby on. It's NPC and Curry Cup to keep us satisfied with our rugby watching. Let's have a quick look back at the month of July. I'll give you guys some stats and thanks from the month. Plus, we will look at a couple of bits of rugby news, including troubled waters in both Samoa and the US, and a change of scenery for Julian Savea. And you guys can let us know your thoughts on what has been going on. Start with the stats and thanks. As I said, it was a pretty big month. There were plenty of big matches and big kind of news stories. The Boks wins over England and Scotland were particularly noteworthy. Likewise, the Aussies taking on the Irish was a big result. Rugby World Rankings were also hotly discussed, with both World Rugby's changes to those rankings and how that's kind of affected the most recent World Rankings. I had a chat with Graham from Rugby Forecast recently about those changes World Rugby made and whether he thinks they'll be more or less accurate following that. So if you want to see that discussion, that'll be up there somewhere. But yeah, it was a pretty full-on month. Where were you guys all watching from? South Africa 1, UK 2, New Zealand 3, Australia 4, and Ireland 5, with the US not too far behind there. France and Fiji rounding out the kind of top 8. So a lot of the countries involved with the Nations Championship, to be fair, which I guess kind of makes sense. And I always like to drill down to the cities. Cape Town 1, Dublin 2, Auckland 3, Pretoria 4, London 5. Sydney was number 6. So again, kind of makes sense. Major population centers being the major sources of a lot of the, the viewers, where you guys are coming from. But then I always like to scroll down to see some place that I'd never heard of. I mean, I have heard of Osaka. I want to see what was the most viewed city from Japan. I was expecting it to be Tokyo, but it was Osaka. So welcome along to anyone watching from Osaka. And then a place in South Africa, there's a place called Great Brak. The Great Brak River, that's a hell of a name, near Cape Town seemingly. 67 views from there. So if you're watching from Great Brak River, welcome along to you as well. Most of you guys are men, as always. That's 90+%, but it used to be like 99. Those numbers are still pretty lopsided, but there's more women watching than before, at least in terms of logged in YouTube accounts. 35 to 44-year-olds 1, 45 to 54-year-olds 2, 55 to 64 3, and 25 to 34 4. But what I like about all those numbers is there's not much between, there's only a few percent between the oldies and the youngies. There's 65+ there as well. YouTube doesn't keep stats on below whatever age, but yeah, it's a genuinely even spread. Different countries, different cities, different ages, mostly dudes. But yeah, all here for the rugby. So thank you guys so much for being here throughout the month. Thank you for subscribing and liking. If you haven't subscribed already, please do us a favor and do that. And also thanks to the patrons, all the people on Patreon who support the channel and keep it alive. Not so much last month. Last month was a really busy month with a little test match rugby action on, but there are times when there's no test matches on. It can go a bit slow in terms of YouTube engagement. That's just the nature of the beast with rugby. So these people keep the channel afloat, essentially, during the quieter months in particular. So thanks to all these people, in particular Frankie and to Angus. Thank you guys for your continued support. If you want to join these people, see a bit of extra 2 cents content, or just support the channel, there'll be a link down there in the description to that. Other ways to support the channel, there's Buy Me a Beer. There's plenty of rugby shops which we are affiliated with here, like the All Blacks shop, the Wallabies shop, England Rugby Store. So if you want rugby gear for the Six Nations shop, if you want rugby jerseys, I love rugby jerseys, click one of those links, and then 2 cents gets a few cents if you buy something from those shops. So you win, get some rugby gear, and I win with some commission. But yeah, ultimately, thank you guys for being here for all this month. Now, there's a couple of bad news stories. One is from Samoa. It's been ongoing. We don't have a definitive result yet of what's happening with Samoan rugby, but it's been kind of developing in that there's been a bit of a fallout between the Samoan Prime Minister and the Samoan Rugby Union, essentially, not happy with how things are going, threatening to pull all official government support from Samoan rugby and potentially set up a rival body to represent Samoa, which would undoubtedly incur some sanctions from World Rugby. Initially, it was reported that if Samoa couldn't get their house in order within like 24 hours, that Samoa were going to be banned from like internationals for 4 years, kicked out of the World Cup kind of thing, replaced by Belgium. World Rugby came out and said that's not the case. They have not given Samoan rugby an ultimatum, but certainly I'm sure they will not want the political goings-on with the Samoan Prime Minister and Rugby Union to be front and center. They would rather things get sorted out. Apparently there's been a letter from the Samoan coach, Tusipisi, and the captain, Theo McFarland, basically saying they don't want to pick a side, but please can we resolve these differences because they don't want to risk their Samoan spot at that 2027 Rugby World Cup next year. That would be such a crazy one to see no Samoa. Remember, they were very late qualifiers for this tournament. They only just snuck through into the tournament, but yeah, it would be weird seeing Samoa not involved. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that they were like 7th in the world. I remember recently also did a video about Eden Park's record, and when I was looking up all the rankings of the teams at the times matches were being played at Eden Park, I was just looking at the world rankings and I saw Samoa up there. I think they were like 7th, having beaten the likes of Wales and Australia and Scotland and whatnot. They were genuinely a pretty decent force to be reckoned with. So it's been a bit of a fall from grace. But we'll see what happens. There's been no definitive statement yet, but if they don't get their act together, there is potential they could be kicked out of the World Cup in 2027. Fingers crossed that's not what happens. Likewise, kind of bad news from the MLR. There's only one news source reporting this as I record this video. That's the America's Rugby News, which is a very reliable and great source of information from the Americas, both North and South. They're reporting that Anthem RC, the rugby club over in the States, who's got partial rugby funding, I think, from World Rugby, their 3-year, I think it was, contract for that funding has come to a conclusion. So the rugby club is going to be wrapped up. So that would mean the MLR over in the States will be down to 5 teams. There was a while when I was watching this tournament a few years ago now, but I was watching it, making videos about it, and they had like 12 or 13 teams or something. It was crazy big. There were teams in like Houston and Austin and Canada and all over the place. They'll be down to 5 teams next year, which is really not great, especially when you consider the Rugby World Cup after the next one in Australia is going to be over in the States. And a lot of the US Eagles, they get professional, semi-professional rugby in the MLR. That is their source of employment and experience. It's going to be a real blow if they lose the MLR. It's hard to see with 5 teams how the future of this competition goes, but they've been bleeding teams for a wee while now. They've been folding left, right, and centre. So Anthem is the latest one, potentially down to 5 teams, assuming the reporting from the America's Rugby News, which, as I said, is very reliable, is indeed correct. So not great news. One bit of good news, Julian Savea, his own club, Moana Pacific, has gone bust, but it looks like he's found his next gig, coaching in club rugby. He is going to be coaching up in Warkworth, which is just north of Auckland, Mahurangi Rugby Club. So congrats to him. He said he always wanted to get into coaching, so I'll be curious to see how he goes. Obviously, club rugby is the place to kind of cut your teeth. He's got the reputation to potentially draw in a few players because they're always looking for players, old rugby clubs, amateur rugby clubs. But yeah, it's always interesting to see a guy who's had such talent to whether they can kind of impart that knowledge into players other than just telling guys, be like Julian Savea, because it's one thing to be able to do it and another thing to be able to coach it. You know what I mean? You find some of the great coaches were not like the ultimate level of rugby players. Like some were, but I feel like there's quite a few coaches who never quite made it at the top level, but because they weren't naturally the most gifted athletes, sometimes were able to impart information better than the top level guys. But Julian Savea's had a hell of a career. We did a video about his career at some point as well. You can check that one out too if you wish. But yeah, thank you guys for being here for the month of July. We look forward to August, Test match rugby, greatest rivalry. NPC getting, is underway, Curry Cup, and then, geez, the top 14's only like a month away. That season's going to come around really fast. The US is a bit further, but anyway, thank you as I said for being here. Subscribe, take care, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.